Good evening. Happy Thursday to everyone. My name is Joey Medea. I'm a creative and storyteller, and this is the Every Day is a Story All Its Own podcast, something I deeply believe, which I'll talk about tonight in context of tonight's subject matter, which is something that I have been teaching. It's been an integral part of my classroom curriculums, my workshops, any mentoring I've done with serious writers. This is a key part. It's fundamental. It's sort of where you start, but this was the right time for it tonight. So this is a creative communication about finding and strengthening your vision and voice. I'm really glad you're here to take the journey with me tonight. All right, so we're going to dive on in. I know your time is precious. I try to keep these creative communications to under an hour. So let's dive in. We're going to start with a definition. What are vision and voice? Well, vision, and again, these are my definitions. You might hear them someplace else, but they seem to have worked over the 30 some odd years that I've been teaching them. Vision is how you see the world. So it's somewhat literal. It's what you see in front of you, but it's also psychological, and it's social, and it's emotional, and it's all of those kinds of things. How you see the world. As a writer, you will then go on to express these in your themes, in your character actions, in the tone that you choose to use, in the genres that you use, if you use any. Do you tell comedic stories because you see life that way? You see it as a comedy. Do you tell very dark dramas? Do you tell family dramas because your vision of the world is very, very family centric? The second part of it, the second V, is voice, and this is how you translate those things onto the page. This is absolutely key. It's absolutely key to when we talk about, which I'm going to talk about as part of tonight, why the structural models work, and I swear by them. And I teach them, and I always say there's so much pushback on them now. Of course, analytical versus intuitive is a very big thing. To me, it's not an or, it's very much an and, all in capitals. So, vision, how you see the world; voice, how you translate onto the page. And of course, what are your tools for that translation? Are dialogue, description, delivery. Think about the horror genre. It's very, very specific. And yet the voices, think about it. You can tell Anne Rice from H.P. Lovecraft, from Stephen King, from Jordan Peele quite easily. And that is because of the vision and the voice. And that is what makes a great writer great. They have a very, very strong vision and voice. And I believe, going back to the larger picture, the largest tapestry of what I'm trying to do with this and with the book, and with 35 years of teaching and practicing these things, is that it's about authenticity. That's what allows vision and voice to come up and unfettered, unfiltered, translate out into the world to make your work unique. And that's why it can stand up to what some people see as formulas in the structural models. I think they're much more than that, but we'll talk about that as they go. So, what you're hearing tonight, this is the first time that I'm doing a video presentation on this subject of video and voice, but I have done a couple of blogs for Stage 32, from my own blog, joeymedeastoryteller.blogspot.com. Thank you all who are engaging with that. I really love it. Please share that stuff. Use it. Same thing tonight. If you know a writer, someone who aspires to be a writer, someone who's struggling to find their voice, and that's something we hear a lot of the time. I can't find my voice. Sometimes veteran writers, longtime writers, lose their voice. It's too much pressure on them. Not sure, but just like a singer, think about Meatloaf. After Bat Out of Hell went absolutely huge, after so many years of struggle with him and Jim Steinman, he went in to record the second album and he literally lost his voice. So creatives can do that. So please feel free to share this. I don't ask of those kinds of things a lot, but I believe very strongly in this material for anyone taking this journey. So 7 questions to develop your vision and voice. You can go back to these. You can find them on the blog, print them out, workshop them, do whatever you want with them. The first one, the fundamental one, and this very much goes with authenticity, I believe, is what is your core story? Your core story, not what the market wants, not what the publishers want, what the agents and managers are looking for, what Hollywood, what the industry is looking for because they think it will sell, but what is your core story? Now, for me, everyone knows it's every day is a story all its own. It's the book, it's the blog, it's the podcast, it is my life. Every single day is a story all its own, a new chapter, another chance. So, what story are you telling? You dream it. You write it, you live it, and it will be so. And I was excited. They were able to fit that on the back cover of the Everyday is a Story All Its Own book. It is my, whatever you call it, pinned X tweet. Comes from the book. I talked about and showed the book last week. It's out there on Amazon. Please, a lot of people in the industry are reading it right now, which I'm very excited about, some very key people, and hopefully that will spread. Not for me personally, but because I believe that the work is important, that it's sound. It comes from a lifetime of practice, reading, learning, being a mentee, being a mentor, so on and so forth. And every day is a story all its own. That chance to tell your story anew every single day, to turn the page, new chapter, introduce new characters, all those things that we do in the structural models anyway, because as Joe Campbell said, our life looks very random as we go through it. But at the end, when we're in our 70s, 80s, and we look back on it, it is as perfect as a carefully structured novel. I'm still a while away from finding that out for sure, but I'm pretty sure that Joe was right. It is really my recipe for living a satisfying, creative life. Not getting down when you get rejected, because you got plenty of else going on. You know why you're there. You know what you're trying to do. You know who you are. You're being relentlessly authentic. And so it's satisfying. My life is satisfying. And I'm very proud to say that at 56, almost 57 years old. I also do believe, and this just isn't blowing smoke or some kind of brand or slogan, I do believe that story changes lives, and stories are the mechanism to change lives. The elevator pitch, and I've told that story to try to get legislators to support a very, very piece of important legislature in West Virginia several years ago. We taught them, don't hit people with statistics. Statistics are not people. Statistics are not moving. Yeah, we've been learned to hit somebody with a statistic. Oh, the death rate is X%. But people can move away from that. But if you tell the story of someone who's been deeply affected by what is going on, you will get them to at least listen, and guaranteed they're going to remember that story longer than they remember the statistics that you might have told them in that same time. It's a pitch. And really, our entire lives are pitches. What is a marriage proposal? It is a pitch. It is the culmination of boy meets girl or person meets person, and it moves us stranger into a strange land. My son is getting married August 30th, and it is a movement to a new place. No matter what anybody says, it's more than just a legal paper. There's more to it. So what is your core story? That's absolutely fundamental. If you're having a problem writing anything at all, you start projects and you give up. Yeah, it might be a craft thing. It might be you just don't know how to move forward past the first act, past the setup, past the initial introduction of the characters. But it really could be this idea that you don't know what you want to say. Therefore, the voice isn't there and the vision There's nothing to translate at the moment. So, what is that core story? What keeps you going in the face of frustration, competition, and rejection? I just finished Tales from the Script, and a lot of these people who have made a lot of money as screenwriters could probably learn from this thing. What is your core story? And the ones that are happy and content, they say, I write my heart, and my heart oftentimes doesn't sell, but at least I'm happy. At least I am happy. And they're selling other stuff too, because they have craft, and you could do that. Watch my episode on work for hire. You'll see all about that. Now, question number 2, equally as important. What is your core story? What motivates you to create? Because lots of people tell their stories and they're not, creatives in the way that a writer is. So what is it? What motivates you to create? In other words, and this is a really hard question. I think all of these are, and they're challenging in a really good way. And I sit down every once in a while, fairly often, take stock of my life. And part of that taking stock of my life is asking myself most of these 7 questions quite often. What motivates you to create? What do you want from the creative act? I have goals for this weekly podcast that I've been doing for over 4 years. It's to try to educate, entertain, but really to educate, to inform, motivate, inspire, and give an audience to the guests that I have. Next week, while I think about it, my guest is Billy Gimo. He is my second cousin on the maternal side of the family. His father, Sam, was brothers with my grandfather, Charles, or Charlie, or Cap, as they called him. Sometimes I wear some of his caps that I still have to this day, obviously, of course, or I couldn't wear them. So there you go for extemporizing. Anyway, Billy's going to be on next week. He is an actor. He has great stories. He's worked for some terrific directors. He's seen some wonderful things. He was in a short of mine that won an award. Billy was terrific. So we're going to show his acting reel, and Billy's going to be on next week. So what motivates you to create? What do you want from the creative act? What will you invest as far as time, attention, effort, and sacrifice? In other words, how important is it to you? And this isn't a question like, well, hey, man, how important is this to you? No, that is your personal, how much time you can, effort that you can. Some people, it takes them 5, 7, 10 years to put their novel out because they're raising a family. They have a full-time job. They have other responsibilities. And when they find that time, when they have it, that's what they do. They don't go to the ball game. They don't go to the beach. They don't put together a scale model. That is what they do. So there you go. What are you willing to invest time, attention, effort, and sacrifice? Do you have a desire from your audience to give you an emotional response? Do you want to inspire change? If you don't, that's fine too. If you just want to educate, if you want to give people a break from life rather than making them think about it, that's all good too. There are no right or wrong answers here. I would say there aren't even weaker or stronger answers, but find your answers, and that will help you build a ladder to your vision and your voice. Do you want to motivate action? You just want to inspire, and then, they get all excited, but then they go home. Do you really want them to do something? Like a Bertolt Brecht, for instance. His theater was so presentational because he didn't want you to forget that you were watching a political mechanism, and he wanted you to take it. It needed to sit inside of you, and you needed to go out and do something with it. That's what made his work successful to him. And he, of course, had a very, very unique, very, very strong, enduring vision and voice. Do you want to give them, like I mentioned, escapism into an alternate universe? That is fine too. James Gunn is making a ton of money doing that kind of thing, and it's all good and it's all fine. If you just want to make them laugh, God bless you, because we all need to laugh, and that is harder said than done. So number 3, to what types of stories and genres are you drawn? I think that's pretty self-explanatory. What kind of stuff lights you up? Do you love horror and you want to tell those horror stories? And look at Jordan Peele and look at Sinners, which just came out. And there was another thing that we recently watched, The Woman in the Yard. And these things have all of the horror elements, and yet they have that moving, inspiring, action-oriented story. Um, Woman in the Yard takes a very hot button topic, and man, if you have ever been there, if you have ever, tread on that ground where that goes, they understand it and they deliver it incredibly well. Number 4, with what types of characters do you most identify? At this point in my life, I am absolutely fascinated by the antihero, by the broken, flawed man who has to crawl his way back to redemption. That's what I'm ingesting as a reader, especially as a viewer with television, with long form narrative, with films. That's really what I am gravitating to. But what types of characters do you most identify with? If you keep in mind, and I'm going to do an episode, I believe it's in September. I have some really great guests for you. Nick Pendleton is returning, and we're doing a take 2 with Karen Lutz, who's really been networking and really making some strides and doing some cool things. So I'm glad that Karen's coming back again. Going to show you all the stuff, the trailers, the reels. She's been winning awards and doing all kinds of great stuff. But I think I'm also going to do character in theme, which I'm excited. And that really comes from this vision and voice stuff. So what types of characters do you most identify with? Who are those characters? Think about the stories that really lit you up, the great characters, the Jane Austen characters, so on and so forth, the Charles Dickens characters, the Victor Hugo characters. I'm just going on and on here. James Joyce's Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man. Did that really light you up? That might tell you something. Number 5, what are your strengths as a storyteller? I have been out of the formal, 9 to 5 corporate world for almost 30 years now. But it is my understanding that you're supposed to, what are your strengths when it comes to, you have to say, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Don't get caught up in your weaknesses right now. You're trying to figure out your vision and your voice, and that's enough. But what are your strengths as a storyteller? Do you really nail dialogue? Do you really understand how people take thoughts and they translate them to the page? Are you a painter? Are you a visual artist at heart and you paint with words? And so you love landscapes. Do you have a great love of history? Didn't want to be a history teacher, but want to tell those stories. That is me very much with my historical fiction pieces. So what are your strengths as a storyteller? Maybe it's voice. You should have a really, really strong voice. I mean, David Mamet tells a great story, but his dialogue delivery is really, really something. It's really amazing. That is a massive strength of his as a storyteller. Number 6, what story do you most want to tell? Now, this is going to be an expression of your core story, but but not like a one-to-one. It's a separate thing. Every day is a story all its own. I deeply believe that. But I'm never consciously thinking about that when I'm writing my works. I'm not. It's there. Characters are striving. Characters are trying to go from where they are to where they want to be. There's all those things that you need that. So think about that. What story do you most want to tell? And I'll give you, even though, and I said it, I think a couple weeks ago in one of these creative communications, I really believe there's just 2. Person meets person. It's a love story. They fall in love. Their world shakes up. They find love, they lose love, they regain love in the classic rom-com kind of formula, and then so many classic stories. It's a backbone of so much of our literature. But then, of course, Stranger in a Strange Land. And as I said, too, when you first fall in love, you are a stranger in a strange land if you're doing it right. There's no way about it. There's the move from the ordinary world to the extraordinary world. Suddenly you're driving home at 4 a.m., thousands of miles from anything you've ever known. And the birds are singing and the pigeons are cooing, as they say. And the man in the iron mask, Jeremy Irons, says, and you're going, oh my gosh, I am in love. And 20 years later, 28 years later, it's still happening. And that person knows who they are. So anyway, what kind of story do you want to tell? In a larger sense, rags to riches, redemption, the bad guys win, which are kind of dystopian stories. Love conquers all. We're all slaves to the man. I love that one. That's my Stanton Chronicles. Got the 10th novel in that series coming out next month. So what kind of stories do you most want to tell? And that could be genre, but within the genre, dive down into subgenres. It's fun. And then number 7, about finding your vision and your voice. What do you want your audience to take with them? Again, that's about motivation, inspiration. Do you want them to take something? Was the earlier question, or part of that earlier question. Get specific here. What exactly do you want them to take with them? Personally, viscerally, emotionally, educationally, inspirationally, what do you want them to take with them? Because that's your job to figure that out. If you know that, it will be implanted. And without getting dogmatic and all that, and yet you can watch tons of previous episodes to find out how to avoid that happening. So to me, once you have that vision and voice, and they're always a work in progress, just like we are, it is becoming, it is not being. As you're moving forward with it and they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger, they're going to give you a great amount of freedom in your writing, because your writing is going to be unique. You can take the most tired formula that there is for a story, and if you're being authentic with a strong vision and a strong voice, it's going to be unique because it's you. And that really is why remounts work, especially on Broadway, right? You have an iconic actor that's Sweeney Todd comes to mind. So let's go with that. Len Cariou was so brilliant in that part, but then George Hearn was brilliant in that part. I think Johnny Depp, in all fairness, did a very good job in that part, and they were all extremely, extremely different. That's because of a strong vision, a strong voice, and there's enough space in the writing to allow an actor to fill it and do it the way they want to do it. Again, this may come down at this point, as we're moving into a case for structural models, to intuitive versus analytical writing. And I've had this discussion with a lot of my guests, and I'll keep on talking about it because it's pertinent and it's out there. But I really do believe it is not an or, it is an and. And at the professional level, oftentimes you're asked to turn in an outline. You're asked to turn in a treatment. This isn't just show up and wing it. Yeah, okay, sometimes that goes on if it's improvisational, if it's a devised work, yeah. But when they're putting literally millions, if not 10 millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars into something, you're not just going to shoot from the hip and go, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. It'll all come together in the end. That's just not realistic. So again, as I say, there's a split field, because a lot of people go, this is formula, I don't want it. Formula is not creative. It is the antithesis of creative. But I will tell you this, these structural tools allow freedom. And I was introduced to this concept in college. So really, really early on, when I was getting my BA in theater and English literature at Arcadia University. And I was very, very lucky to have someone who's a mentor to this very day, 35, almost 40 years later, Richard Wertheim, who went on to win a James Michener Award. He was the editor-in-chief of Archaeology magazine. His memoir is stunning. It won the Michener Award. The guy writes about writing all the time. I have thick folders. I get his stuff whenever I can all these years later. Freedom comes from form. And so let's talk about that. Why does adherence to form set us free? Some of it is the nature of storytelling. Storytelling sets up expectations. Storytelling has a certain science and chemistry to it. And I invite you to watch my episode, The Science of Story. It's one of these episodes from back, I think still this year, but you can go find it on the YouTube channel for sure. I talk about this at length in my book, Every Day is a Story, because that's how important it is. So let me put it this way, or think about it this way. Stories are as old as humankind. Stories around the fire, oral traditions passed on, cave paintings, which are in the form of pictographic stories. They have been around forever. Well, those oral traditions became our myths. They became our fairy tales. They became our early epics, and they became our early stage plays when we get into the time of the Greeks and the Romans. And these stories were recycled, refined endlessly. So they're wonderful, wonderful tools. I teach a program and workshop with wannabe writers, or sometimes with teachers, administrators, corporate people, to get them thinking in writing terms, outcome terms, how a mix of people, with a certain theme in a certain place at a certain time have a certain outcome with a problem to solve. That's the 3 threes of storytelling, which I talked about last time I did one of these. So I teach 5-minute myth, because there's very, very specific ingredients to a myth. And yet the amount of myths that we have are endless, because the voice and the vision, be it cultural, economic, social, so on and so forth, time period, geographic location, those formulae manifest in very, very unique ways. And it's always fun for people. I also highly recommend Brutal Bainolheim's uses of enchantment. So we have these myths, we have these folk tales, we have these early epics, Gilgamesh, so on and so forth. We have the Scandinavian skalds and their big epics. And again, we move into the stage plays. Well, from early on, thinkers, practitioners like Aristotle, like Goethe in Germany, studied these things, and they found forms to them. This was taken up, then broken out into the 3-act model. David Mamet did terrific work, The 3 Uses of the Knife. Talk about that a lot in the book, and always with directors, always with writers, always talking about the 3 uses of the knife. And then you have the 2 big, they call them gurus. I don't like that word, but the 2 screenwriting gurus, who are Robert McKee and Sid Field. Then, of course, we have the great master, probably the mentor from afar, the mentor I never met, that had the largest impact on my life. I talk about him to death. Nobody will be surprised. Of course, Joe Campbell in The Hero's Journey. And again, he took all these myths. He took all those folk tales. He took these world stories. He took the Grail quests. He took Gilgamesh, took the Scandinavian skalds, big epics. Took the Popol Vuh and the Mesoamerican tales, and looked at them, broke them down, and they all had common traits, common denominators, and out of those grow these structural models. So you can scrap everything, and you could be the Dadaist, Surrealist writer. You're going to have a hard time engaging with people. You're going to have a hard time communicating, because when you're making up your own language, how then does that translate to people's ear and to their thoughts and to their comprehension and all of those kind of things? And I'm not saying don't do that kind of stuff, because I've done plenty of experimental stuff, but just have the expectation that that's going to reach a very few amount of people. And even if they engage with it because it's new and it's different and they think they should because that's their hip mentality, you may not get some of the things, from those questions that I asked earlier. Of course, Chris Vogler, who was a story analyst for Disney for a really long time, he wrote a book about the mythic journey using the hero's journey, and that really solidified its presence in Hollywood. And like I said, now it's getting somewhat of a pushback. Some of the other things that I use when I do my story analyst work, my clients know I include these things as appropriate. Blake Snyder's beat sheet is absolutely wonderful. I've mentioned it in the past. I have probably 2 dozen, maybe 3 dozen films I have broken down using Blake Snyder's beat sheet, the whole Save the Cat thing. And there's something out there that you can find out in the world called the A through K thriller worksheet. I use that. There's my own 3 threes of good storytelling, which you can find in the Everyday Story All Its Own book, and you can find videos for that. There's some of the very first videos that I did 7 years ago on this YouTube channel. Also, thank you those who are watching on LinkedIn. Of course, those of you who are watching on Facebook, that goes away in 3 weeks. That's their new policy now. There's only videos up from 3 weeks. Everything older than that is now completely gone. So, but you can find it all on YouTube, of course. And also thanks to ERT Radio, where this will replay in 3 weeks as audio only, Wednesday night, 10 p.m. EST, if you'd rather hear me than see me. And then Freytag's Pyramid, which I will get back to just in a little bit when I talk about the science of story, because it really matters. A lot of people, again, they reject these all out of hand and they go, they kill my creativity, they kill my originality. I think that's a defect in the strength of your vision and voice. I really, really do. And that is the hang up there. Writers, here's what I find. If you're pushing against all this kind of stuff, you're just shooting from the hip. These are also writers who tend to do wholesale rewrites. They're always behind in their scheduling, whether it's self-imposed or other people's scheduling. They're frustrated a lot. They're not creating compelling or producible work, and yet they're complaining that writing is some kind of a war. And that's because of Stephen Pressfield, who was a soldier turned writer and wrote The War on Art. And I am just so incredibly against this. I don't know. I've written almost 60 substantial works between plays, film scripts, novels, nonfiction, and never have I sat here and said, oh my gosh, I'm in a battle. First of all, I think it's somewhat disrespectful. We're just sitting there with a pen or paper or a word processor or a typewriter, just trying to tell a story. It ain't combat. So don't tell me that. I just got through tens and tens and tens and tens of hours of edits, polishing, rewrites, reordering for my latest novel, Mothman, was here. And sometimes it wasn't fun. And sometimes I questioned myself. And sometimes I just wanted to give up and I was exhausted and I had a crisis of confidence and things were sailing along. And then I hit a piece of writing that I was just embarrassed by. And really, though, if I was talking to one of my mentees, I would say, it just isn't fully hatched. Somehow you missed it. You came into it too early. You stayed too late. You weren't clear on the character wants. There are reasons. And if you can stop back and fix that, then you can get on with the business of doing your work rather than self-doubting yourself. But never once did I say, this is a war, this is a battle, and I'm bleeding, and I'm losing my soul. And it's just crazy. And I don't mean to be any kind of way, except it's unnecessary. So don't do it. Just don't do it. Nothing really says unprofessional than that kind of lack of craft. Never mind professional or not, but lack of craft. So really let that go, that writing is akin to warfare. It patently is not. I mentioned I was going to talk about Freytag again and why these structural models are really exciting and necessary, time proven from the earliest time of humankind. Can't argue with that. And there is that hard science. So again, watch my Science of Story. There's a whole chapter on it in Every Day is a Story All Its Own in the book. But story affects the brain chemically. This is proven. So they took a story that was just kind of random, sort of had no structure, IOUs that weren't paid, non-compelling characters, all of that kind of stuff. And not much happened in the brain chemically. One thing that's going to happen is you're going to produce a lot of cortisol because you're either bored or you're tense or you're frustrated or you hate the story or it's going nowhere, or the story has unpaid IOUs. So it sets up all this stuff that really agitates you. Like we Sicilians say, it really gives you agita. but there's no resolution. My wife, who's quite a talented storyteller, I call her the Empress of Story. She gets so agitated when the bad guys are winning. Oh my gosh, I can't stand it. And that is a flood of cortisol. That's very useful for getting us to stay in because we need the fix. We need what's on the other side. And these structural models will get you there. So Freytag's pyramid. I really started working with this when I was in grad school for a little while. Freytag's pyramid, which goes this exposition, but it's really introduction. It's really the ordinary world because exposition, you know what, a bore with an info dump. The ordinary world, right? And then the inciting incident. So the letter comes, the phone call comes, the accident happens, the loss occurs of a job, of a loved one, of a marriage, of a situation, the death of a dream, something that pulls you out of the ordinary world, creates a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and sets you in motion. That inciting incident, the page 10 problem for the screenwriters out there. And formulaically, that works pretty well in a 2-hour movie, I have to tell you. You have the rising action, and this is because the stakes are raising. So where else is it going to go but up? The tension is going up. You're producing cortisol for your audience. There isn't a relief. The hero's getting hammered. They don't know what they're doing. They're a stranger in a strange land. So all the rules are gone. They've gone from riches to rags. That's one that will do that. Then you have the climax. Then you have the falling action, the resolution, the denouement, French for the untying. When a story has these things, the brain has a very considerable release of oxytocin, which is really cool. That then counteracts the cortisol. So you wonder why you have an absolutely unsatisfying story. People have taken the ride, even in a movie or the long form narrative, and they come out of the movie theater going, what the did I just watch? Like, what was that? What happened? You're stressed. You didn't get your oxytocin. You didn't get that nice resolution. You didn't get that happily ever after. And you're pissed about it because your brain chemistry's out of whack. Stories without any structure, there is no oxytocin release. So ask somebody for a hug. That should help. Have them rub your arms, rub your head a little, something like that. And cortisol, the stress hormone, wins there. The stress chemical wins. So empathy, of course, is essential to the audience. And that is the primary role of our characters. We feel for them. We get upset for them. It's like being a parent. Another structural model that I talk about in the book, I've come to fairly recently, but it really works. And so I use it all the time, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're worrying about eating, drinking, companionship, shelter, you're not looking for the higher things. You're not looking for, in fancy psychological terms, self-actualization. You just ain't there. You can't, because you are in survival mode. Characters after the inciting incident are often in survival mode. So they're not sitting around, oh, I'm so hungry, but I really want to figure out the mysteries of the universe. I want to find out why I'm not fulfilled. No, your stomach needs to be filled. So in nefarious societies, oppressive governments, they don't want you to have a lot because they don't want you self-actualizing. They don't want you competing with them, thinking you're somebody. One of the characters that I love to do that I'm doing in October is Samuel Bellamy, the pirate, who said, we were all princes of the world, and we have every right to wage war upon anyone who would try to take away our rights as a king with 2,000 ships on the sea and 200,000 men in the field. That is what the American Revolution was about for so many people. I'm reading David McCullough's Pulitzer Prize winning works now. Just finished 1776. I'm reading John Adams, people like Thomas Jefferson. They had such strong ideals. Flawed, yeah, all of them, every single one of them. And the slavery issue will hang forever over the heads of some otherwise very people that we really want to emulate. But they were also striving, while they were trying to help people meet their base needs, they were striving for higher ideals. And that's how all of that works. So applying these time-tested structural models will also really up your efficiency. And we could all really use some more time. If for nothing else is you can finish that work sooner and move on and create some other work. Because I know I was just saying to a colleague recently, even at 56 years old, I'm not going to write everything that's in my head, these long series that I want to write. I just don't know that time's going to be on my side if I live to be into my 80s or 90s, but maybe if I keep my mind sharp. So anyway, George Bernard Shaw said this, and probably 15 years ago when I was teaching this, I was pretty much leaving it at that. And I'll say now that it's much more complex. But he said, spend 80% of your time in planning, 20% in the writing. Again, I think it's more complex. And I don't think Shaw was saying sit for 80% of the total time that it's going to take to create a work of art, a play, a novel, so on and so forth. And then only spend 20% of the time doing it. But oftentimes we're thinking when we're writing that could be dangerous. It could cause writer's block if you're putting in too much judgment. But to sit back, to walk away, to give it some thought, I would lump that in the 80%. The 20% then is getting it down on the page. In this planning, though, is the outlining. I spend a tremendous amount of time outlining, and that really helps me move the train along, keep being prolific. I have the next two novels, which are also the last two, 6 and 7 in the series of the pirate novels, are already completely outlined and are already sort of like mini treatments. So that's great. When I do have time to go and write those, it's going to be much more efficient than it would otherwise be. I mentioned I'm reading David McCullough's books. It is going to jump from the 1720s to the 1770s, the series, and I'm going to do 7 books on the American Revolution. So for years now, I have been in the research phase while I've been doing all that other stuff. I couldn't imagine if I said, okay, the pirates are done. They'll never be done, but I mean those 7 books for me. And now I have to do years and years of research so that I can talk articulately about the American Revolution. So that's, I think, what that kind of thing does. So again, do these things diminish vision and voice? No, they're completely separate. How you see the world and how you want to talk about and translate how you see that world, they're sacrosanct. That is who you are. That is your authenticity as a creative. Taking those things and putting them into the structural models are just that. They are structures. And they allow you to put the stuff in and organize it quickly and efficiently and based on history and based on science, so that you know you got the cortisol shot, but ultimately you're going to have the oxytocin shot. To mix them all up together is a massive mistake. And again, I think the people who are crying about, oh, I don't want to be like everybody else, vision and voice is the place to do that. Not dismiss structural models out of hand that have given people a lot of success, enduring work, incited change. Playwriting is extremely, extremely formulaic, but it works extremely, extremely well. And plays have sparked revolutions, man. Plays have done some amazing stuff, even though they're looked on sort of as the redheaded stepchild and are, oh, I was a playwright, but now I went off and I'm a screenwriter. I love them equally well, and I wouldn't give up one to do the other, no matter the amount of money or the opportunities or any of that kind of thing. Harold Clurman said this in his book on directing. I'll be referring to Clurman a lot when I do character and theme, and how they're related. Vision and voice, and this is my own insert there, but this is where it picks up. I'm talking about a very specific thing here. Vision and voice allow a form that rises out of its own organic nature. Nothing can be organic if it's formulaic, if it's coming just through the filter. You have to be you all the way through, no matter what doors you walk through, no matter what filters you put your stuff through. This is also why it's important as a writer when you're dealing with directors and when you're dealing with producers. Stronger your vision and voice, the deeper your authenticity, the more it's all going to last, the less likely you are to cave, or they are to take advantage because the work is weak and it's got too many structural gaps and is open to too many interpretations because you weren't strong enough in what you did. Actors need a very strong vision and voice when they're working with directors, when they're translating the work of the writer, so on and so forth. And directors, absolutely, you guys need a very, very strong vision and a very, very strong voice. And when I say voice, it's not yelling and screaming at everybody through a megaphone or shouting yourself hoarse. It is that voice, that translation. You take the raw material of what the writer has written, you interpret it, you share your vision and pull in the visions of all the other people. The most recent one of these creative communications I did was writing for the stage and screen. And screenwriters can avail themselves of all of these amazing professionals. Here's one for you. Music has very, very specific structures, whether it's verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus, or whatever it happens to be. Music has very specific structures. So you take people like Barbra Streisand, people, Liza Minnelli, Frank Sinatra, more modern people, Harry Connick Jr., Christina Aguilera. They arrange the songs for themselves. They take their vision and their voice, quite literally in this case, and they translate it. And that's why a Frank Sinatra song is a Frank Sinatra song, why his My Way is very different than Elvis Presley's My Way. It's the same darn song, but they're very, very different. Because each of them had a very strong vision, had a very strong voice. Elvis is there too. He's a songwriter, so it's a little different, but also did standards and translated those and really made them his own and made a splash with them, caused controversy for the way he did some of them. So again, this was a fairly quick one tonight. I'm wrapping up here. A strong vision and voice do not make your writing robotic or like everyone else. If you really have something to say, how could it come across robotic or the same thing everybody else is saying? Every single one of us is unique. Not one of us on the planet has had the same experience. I will even say my brother and I were 18 months apart. We shared a room for a very, very long time, and bunk beds, so in very close quarters. And our vision and our voice to this day are very, very, very different. And that's how all of this works. So again, I'll leave you with another metaphor. I talk about this one in Every Day is a Story all its own. A house with no foundation or walls that aren't square is not going to last. It is going to fall down. It may look cool for about 2 seconds. Any kind of building has a core structure. Think of Frank Lloyd Wright, how innovative the shapes and the, you can add things. You can add a dome, but a dome has to be supported. That was huge architectural breakthroughs on how do we make a big, expansive dome and get it to stay the hell up. It's all through foundation, through core, through the fundamentals, flying buttresses, vaulted pediments, all these kinds of things that make them beautiful. Glass fronts, breezeways, and all of this kind of thing. But there is still a core building there. You can't do that just to be unique. It's not safe. It's literally not structurally sound. And in the first strong wind, it is going to fall down. Like I say, even innovative has a core structure. Frank Lloyd Wright, as innovative as he was, he invented rebar. I mean, that's the structure of all structure. Take that to reinforce the concrete, to make the foundation, so you can do really cool stuff on top of it, but the core is there. Frank Lloyd Wright, I don't know if you know this, but rebar was inspired by the spine, by the innards, by the structure of the saguaro cactus, which is, I just think, really, really cool. Because I went to see Taliesin and some other structures, and we were in the Saguaron Desert. And one of my dear mentors, Jerry Cullity, who I lost a long time ago when he was my age that I am right now, lost him 20 years ago. Jerry told me that story about Frank Lloyd Wright, and that was super, super cool. So again, man, writing is not all war. Anybody who says it is, the problem is they're holding a weapon and they're turning it on themselves. So that's it for tonight. Thanks. A quick 50 minutes. I hope that this was helpful. I was going through it so quickly, I didn't even look in the chat room. Hello to everyone. Tanya, who I talked about a couple times tonight, once kind of secretively and once straight out, is here. Hello to everyone else. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. And everyone, I will see you next week when my guest is actor Billy Giaimo. We're going to keep it all in the family. We're going to talk a little bit about the fam. I always talk about being a Sicilian from New Jersey. He'll talk about that as well. Thank you so much. Let's go. Oh, thanks everybody who supported Knight's show last week. The response has been terrific. I know he's absolutely loving it, and that means so much to me, as Knight means so much to me. So I will talk to you soon.